From Anshe Sfard Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Toledot, praying across from Rivka. We find in the Parsha of Toledot, of course, Rivka had no children, and she turns to prayer as a solution. Vayetar Yitzchak l'Hashem l'nochach ishto, and Yitzchak prayed across from his wife, for his wife. What does it mean, l'nochach ishto? For she was barren, and God answered him, and indeed she conceived. So the question is, what does it mean that he prayed across from his wife? Rabbi Mizrahi, one of the commentators on Rashi, says, how could he pray in front of his wife? It looks like he's praying to her. You're not supposed to, says the Gemara in Brachos, pray behind a person. It looks like you're praying to them. The Maharal of Prague, also commenting on Rashi, says, Rashi is bothered. I mean, is he going to be distracted by his wife? He's praying right in front of his wife. What's going on? What does it mean to pray across from his wife? So Rashi says, no, he didn't pray right across from her. On the contrary, they were separated. That in fact, Rashi says, Ze omid b'zavid ze, zo umid palel. This one stood in this corner and he prayed. She stood in that corner and she prayed. So he was praying here, she was praying there. It's a beautiful image. Husband and wife, both dedicated to God, both turning to God to solve their problems, both praying, but one in one corner, one in the other. Rashi seemingly gets this from the Midrash, although he changes the wording. There it simply says, Yitzchak is stretched out in prayer over here. She's stretched out in prayer over there. And he is praying to Ribono Shel Olam, Kol habanim she'ata noten li tzadeket hazo. All the children I have should be from this woman. I don't want other wives. And she too says, Kol habanim she'ata noten li tzaddik hazeh. All children I have should be from this man. I don't want to have any other. It's a beautiful prayer. They're both praying on behalf of the other, both thinking, each one thinking of the other. But what's this expression? What is this expression that Rashi has? One corner versus the other corner. Let's get back to that in a minute. Meantime, the Rashbam, Rashi's grandson, says the Yitzchak prayed not across, but rather for his wife. That not necessarily in her presence, but he was praying simply for her. Usual Rashbam simplifying the answers. The Sforno and the Radak maintain that Yitzchak simply stood across from her. He wanted to be near her. The Radak says that you want to stir your emotions. You stand next to the bed of the sick and you pray for them. So too, Yitzchak stood near his wife to be stirred up and say, look at this woman. She's bereft of children. She feels bad about it. He's praying. He wants to be close to Rivka. He wants to stir up his prayers for this woman. But let's go back to that Rashi. Why the expression, this corner versus that corner? This Rashi seems to get from two particular stories in the Talmud. One is in Gemara in Tainis, Abba Chilkia, the grandson of Choni HaMa'agel, the great mystics, great people who were great at praying. He said to his wife, Nesik la'agra, let's go up to the roof. Nibai rachme, we'll pray for mercy. Kam iyu b'chad hazavita, ve'iyu b'chad hazavita. He stood in one corner, she stood in the other corner. There they prayed, and sure enough, the rain came across the wife's corner. Here in our parsha, it seems that Yitzchak is answered for prayers, but in any event, we find the two corners. And then we have Tosefta and Brachos that says that when Rabbi Akiva used to pray, when he's by himself, if a person left Rabbi Akiva praying, he'd find him in this corner, he'd find him in a different corner, because he would make so many kriyot and shtachavayot, he was bowing and praying so many times that he'd land out in a different corner. There is the idea of praying in a corner. There's also a Tanchuma and Kitisa, which says, Lo iniach Moshe Zaviz, Moshe didn't leave any corner where he didn't pray. something about praying in the corners. An old acquaintance of mine, Rabbi Ezra Schwat, formerly of Yeshivat Har Etzion and Bar Ilan, he said, perhaps this idea of the corners relates to another element. We know that prayers relate to sacrifices. That tefillot, keneged tiknum, that prayers correspond to the original sacrifices. So too we find in a sacrifice. Certain sacrifices are brought where you sprinkle the blood, shtaim shein arba. You sprinkle it on this corner, and it goes from one side to the other. The corner covers both one side and the other. And then the other corner across the way, covering both this side and that side. And thereby, with these two sprinklings, shein arba, it covers all four sides. That's perhaps, he suggests, what's going on here between Yitzchak and Rivka, between Abba Chilkiah and his wife. They want to cover all the sides. The woman from her angle, her more emotional angle, her feminine angle, the man from his angle, from his perspective. And with that, each covers two sides, each covers different perspectives of it. Another idea he mentions is that there's some kind of a triangle, that clearly the man, the woman, and God, as the Gemara in Kedushin says, form a triangle, a triumvirate, each playing a role in creating a child. And they pray at the corner. He prays at the corner, hoping indeed that the triumvirate, the triangle between God, his wife, and himself will create this child. There's also the notion of being in a corner. And the prophet Jonah, was concerned about his life. He went b'yarchetei tzfina. He went down into the recesses, corner of the boat. Corner, you feel cornered. You feel like you're in a jam. You're stuck, and that exemplifies the situation they were in. They felt cornered. They felt stuck. As people who pray, Rabbi Soloveitchik says, we like to pray together. We want to feel supported by others. But the truth is, when we pray as individuals. We pray somehow in separation from each other, recognizing that some way it's just me and God. There's no one else that can help. It's just me and God. In that sense, he puts himself in a corner where there's no one to look at but the two walls, so to speak. And there, in that jam, in that crisis of faith, that's where you find God. That's where you turn to God in the greatest sense of urgency. This parsha, Vayetar Yitzchak Lashem Menochach Ishto, you pray for others. One idea is that as we pray, we should think of others. If you pray for someone else, Rashi says, Hunan Natchila. You want to really pray for someone else. It's so crucial in reaching out to others. Another idea that's taught here is that as we pray, we need to recognize how alone we are. And in that aloneness, we can perhaps find God, and then we can find the solution to our prayers. And finally, as a family, we need to do, each one needs to do their job, each in their corner. And together, we can form a triangle. Together, we can form a whole. And together, we can form a community. As Rabbi Soloveitchik points out, our community consists of the Jewish people, myself, other Jews, other members of my family. And there's another individual in that community, and that's God. And if we reach out within the loneliness of our corner that we often find ourselves in, we can reach out. Hopefully, the corner can be rounded off by the presence, the one who can solve all these problems, the presence of God. Thank you for joining us here for discussions of Parshat Toledot. Join us each week here at the Bethel Emeth Anshe Sfarad Bethel Emeth congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee. And thank you, Jason Lefkowitz, for making today's presentation possible. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.